My fascination with Opuntia, a world of prickly pears. As a nature enthusiast, I've always been drawn to the unique beauty and resilience of cacti. Among them, the genus Opuntia, commonly known as prickly pear, holds a special place in my heart. These remarkable plants, with their distinctive flat pads and vibrant flowers, have captivated me with their ability to thrive in harsh environments and their surprising versatility. A diverse and widespread genus. Opuntia is a large genus belonging to the cactus family, Cactaceae. It encompasses a remarkable diversity of species, with estimates 160. These species vary greatly in size and form, from low-growing shrubs to tree-like giants reaching over 16 feet in height. Their defining feature, however, is their flattened, segmented stems, often referred to as cladodes or pads. These pads not only serve as the plant's primary photosynthetic organs, but also play a crucial role in water storage, enabling them to survive in arid and semi-arid regions. The geographic distribution of Opuntia is equally impressive. While native to the Americas, these hardy plants have successfully colonized diverse habitats across the globe. From the frigid plains of Canada to the scorching deserts of South America, and even reaching parts of Europe, Africa, and Australia, Opuntia species have demonstrated an exceptional ability to adapt and thrive. A bounty of benefits. Beyond their aesthetic appeal, Opuntia species offer a wealth of practical uses. For centuries, various cultures have utilized these plants for food, medicine, and even as a source of dye. The fruits, often called tunas, are juicy and sweet, consumed fresh or processed into jams, jellies, and beverages. The young pads, known as nopales, are also edible and are a popular ingredient in Mexican cuisine. In traditional medicine, Opuntia has been employed to treat a variety of ailments, including wounds, burns, and digestive issues. Modern research has further validated some of these medicinal properties, revealing the plant's potential anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and even anti-cancer effects. Moreover, certain Opuntia species play a vital role in the production of cochineal dye. This vibrant red dye, derived from the cochineal insect that feeds on the plants, has been used for centuries to color textiles and cosmetics. FAQs. How to propagate prickly pear cactus. Propagating prickly pear cactus is surprisingly easy, and it's been a fun way to expand my collection without spending a fortune. The trickiest part for me was definitely remembering not to water the cuttings right away. Those little pads want to callus over first, and letting them sit out for a few weeks after cutting them off the mother plant did feel a bit risky. But sure enough, a hardened layer formed, and then it was planting time. I used a cactus mix with lots of drainage and buried the pads about a third of the way deep. Now the waiting game begins again, but seeing those tiny new pads emerge a few months later is always so rewarding. Where to buy prickly pear cactus? I haven't bought a prickly pear cactus in a while since I've been busy propagating my own, but I've gotten some great ones from different places. Local nurseries are a good bet, especially ones that specialize in cacti and succulents. They usually have a good variety, and the staff can answer any questions you have about care. Another option that's been surprisingly successful for me is looking at local yard sales and online marketplaces. People sometimes sell off unwanted prickly pear pads, which is a perfect way to snag a free one or two. Just be sure to inspect the pad carefully for any signs of pests or disease before taking it home. How to make prickly pear syrup. Making prickly pear syrup is a bit of a process, but it's totally worth it for the delicious, vibrant syrup you end up with. The trickiest part for me was definitely handling the prickly pears themselves. Those tiny glochids are no joke. I invested in a pair of thick gardening gloves and some long tongs, which made the process much smoother. Once I had the prickly pears prepped, I usually followed a recipe that involves simmering them with water to release their juices. Then came the fun part, smashing them up with a potato masher to extract all that beautiful magenta color and flavor. Straining it multiple times can be a bit tedious, but it's important to get rid of the seeds and pulp for a smooth syrup. The final simmering with sugar takes a while, but the reward is a thick, rich syrup that tastes amazing on pancakes, yogurt, or even in cocktails. How fast do prickly pear cactus grow? My prickly pears definitely grow at a steady pace, but it's not exactly what I call fast. They aren't slowpokes either, though. I find it depends a lot on the variety and how well they're doing in their pot or in the ground. My Opuntia elysiana, for example, seems like a real overachiever. That thing can put out maybe 10 or so new pads a year if it's happy. But some of the smaller ones, like my prickly pear chum Opuntia microtices, grow at a more leisurely pace, maybe 2 or 3 new pads a season. As long as I give them plenty of sun, well-draining soil, and the occasional watering, they all seem pretty content to keep expanding their little prickly empires. How to make a prickly pear margarita? Prickly pear margaritas. Those are my summertime favorite. I like to keep things a little sweet and tart, so my recipe leans a touch more towards the prickly pear syrup. Here's how I do it. First, I prep the glass. I rim it with a lime wedge and then dip it in a mixture of coarse salt and a little bit of sugar for a sweet and salty kick. Then I fill my cocktail shaker with ice and add 2 ounces of tequila, 1 ounce of fresh lime juice, 1.5 ounces of prickly pear syrup, and a half ounce of Cointreau for a bit of orange liqueur magic. The next part is key, the shaking. I vigorously shake that shaker for about 30 seconds or until it gets nice and cold to the touch. That ensures everything gets nice and blended and frosty. Finally, I strain the margarita into my prepared glass and admire the beautiful pink color. A lime wedge for garnish. And I'm ready to sip on a taste of sunshine. Can dogs eat prickly pear? This one can be a bit tricky. I've seen some conflicting information online about whether prickly pear is okay for dogs. On the one hand, I've read that the pads themselves, once properly prepared to remove the glochids, those tiny prickles and spines, can be a safe and even healthy treat for pups. They're supposed to be full of fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants. But here's the thing. I'd never want to risk my dog's health. Those glochids seem like a choking hazard waiting to happen, and even a small amount of the fruit could cause stomach upset. So, to be on the safe side, I just don't give my pup any prickly pear at all. There are plenty of other dog-safe treats out there, and I'd rather play it safe than have to deal with a potential vet visit. When does prickly pear cactus bloom? In my experience, prickly pear cactus blooms are a true sign that summer is on its way. I usually start seeing little buds appear on the pads sometime in mid to late May. Then for a few weeks, it's like a waiting game as the buds slowly get bigger and bigger. Finally, somewhere between June and July, the payoff arrives. Those fat buds burst open into these gorgeous flowers. They can be bright yellow, orange, or even reddish depending on the variety, and they're surprisingly big and showy. It's pretty amazing to see such delicate flowers coming out of those tough, prickly pads. The blooms don't last forever, but for a couple of weeks my little patio jungle is a riot of color. Where to buy prickly pear syrup? You can find prickly pear syrup at some specialty food stores, online retailers, and Mexican grocery stores. If you're having trouble finding it in stores, you can always make your own prickly pear syrup at home. It's a bit of a process, but it's totally worth it for the delicious, vibrant syrup you end up with. How to transplant prickly pear cactus. Transplanting a prickly pear cactus is a rewarding experience, giving your prickly friend a new home to grow and thrive. Here's what's worked for me. Timing is key. I usually wait until spring or early summer for transplanting when the threat of frost has passed and the prickly pear is actively growing. Prepare the new home. Choose a pot with good drainage. Cacti hate soggy feet. I use a pot a couple of inches wider than the current one and fill it with a cactus and succulent mix. Adding some perlite or pumice for extra drainage is a good idea too. Gently remove the cactus. This is the part where caution is your best friend. Wear gloves and long sleeves to protect yourself from those glochids, tiny barbed spines. Using a shovel, carefully loosen the soil around the base of the cactus. Then, with a firm but gentle hand, lift it out of the pot. Let the wound heal. Once out of the old pot, place the prickly pear in a shady spot for a few days to allow the disturbed roots to callus over. This helps prevent rot after planting. Plant and settle in. Fill the new pot with the cactus mix, leaving enough space for the cactus to sit level with the rim or slightly higher. Carefully lower the prickly pear into the pot and fill in the remaining space with the mix, gently firming it around the base. Give it some TLC. Water the transplanted cactus lightly and avoid soaking the soil. Then, place it in a bright spot with good air circulation. Resist the urge to water again for a week or two, letting the roots establish themselves in the new environment. With a little patience and these steps, your prickly pear cactus should adjust to its new home just fine and continue to grow happily. How to tell if a prickly pear is ripe? Here's how I spot a ripe prickly pear. Sight is a big giveaway. Sure, some varieties stay green even when ripe, but generally, a ripe prickly pear will have a shift in color. Look for vibrant hues like deep reds, yellows, or even oranges. Avoid any prickly pears with green ends. Those are still maturing. Feel plays a part too. A ripe prickly pear will give slightly to gentle pressure. Don't go overboard with the squeeze test though, as you don't want to bruise the fruit. It should feel firm, but not rock hard. Another sign to watch for is the flower scar on the top of the fruit. On a ripe prickly pear, this scar will likely be smooth and flat. If it's still raised or indented, the fruit probably needs more time. Finally, some folks say the tiny spines called glochids will fall off a ripe prickly pear. While this can sometimes be true, I wouldn't rely solely on this method. Those glochids can be sneaky and linger even on a fully ripe fruit. Can bearded dragons eat prickly pear fruit? Absolutely. Prickly pear fruit can be a delicious and nutritious treat for bearded dragons, but with a few things to keep in mind. Here's the scoop from my experience as a bearded dragon owner. It's a treat, not a staple. Prickly pear fruit is full of sugar, so it should only be offered as an occasional snack, maybe once or twice a week. Their main diet should focus on veggies and live insects. Prep is key. Those glochids and spines are a no-go for bear eyes. Just like I do when I'm making prickly pear syrup, I gotta remove all the prickly bits before offering any to my dragon. A pair of kitchen tongs and a sharp knife are my best friends for this job. Seeds need to go. While some sources say a few prickly pear seeds are okay for bear eyes, I avoid them altogether. They can be a choking hazard or cause digestive issues. So, I take the time to slice the fruit open and remove any seeds before offering it to my little dude. Portion control is important. Even though it's a treat, don't go overboard with the amount. A small dice of prickly pear, chopped into bite-sized pieces, is plenty for most bearded dragons. Overall, with a little prep work, prickly pear fruit can be a fun and healthy addition to your bearded dragon's diet. Just remember, moderation is key. How do you cut a prickly pear? Cutting a prickly pear, gotta be careful with those glochids. Here's my prickly pear taming routine. Gear up. Safety first. Those tiny barbs can lodge themselves in your skin and cause irritation. I throw on a pair of thick gardening gloves and maybe even some long sleeves for extra protection. Slice the ends. I use a sharp knife to lop off about 1/4 inch from each end of the prickly pear. This discards the pointy bits and exposes some of the flesh. Make a slice. Now comes the tricky part. I carefully make a single, vertical cut along the side of the prickly pear, going from top to bottom, but not cutting all the way through. It should be deep enough to just pierce the skin. Peel it off. Here's where the gloves come in handy. I gently slip a finger under the skin at the top of the cut and use it to peel the skin back from the flesh. The peel should come away fairly easily, revealing the beautiful fruit inside. Optional, seed removal. Prickly pear flesh is dotted with tiny black seeds. These are technically edible, but I prefer to remove them for a smoother texture. I use a knife to carefully cut out the seeds, or if the fruit is soft enough, I might just scoop out the flesh with a spoon, leaving the seeds behind. Voila! There you have it, a prepped prickly pear ready for all sorts of delicious uses. Just remember, take your time and prioritize safety when handling those prickly pears. How to grow prickly pear from seed. Growing prickly pear cactus from seed can be a fun and rewarding experience, but it takes some patience. Here's how I've done it. Seed prep. First things first, you need the seeds. You can extract them from a ripe prickly pear fruit by scooping out the flesh and rinsing the seeds under clean water. Gently rub the seeds between your fingers to remove any remaining fruit pulp. Cold stratification. While not always necessary, some swear by cold stratification to improve germination rates. This involves simulating winter conditions for the seeds. Place the seeds in a moist paper towel or cloth and put them in a sealed plastic bag. Then, store the bag in your refrigerator for 4 to 5 weeks. Planting time. After the cold treatment, or if you skipped it, it's planting time. Fill a pot with a well-draining cactus mix. You can find pre-mixed options or create your own by combining regular potting mix with sand or perlite for extra drainage. Seeding. Moisten the soil but avoid soaking it. Since prickly pear seeds need light to germinate, gently press the seeds onto the surface of the soil and don't bury them deeply. You can lightly sprinkle a thin layer of sand or cactus mix over the seeds. Light and water. Place the pot in a bright, warm location with indirect sunlight. Keep the soil moist but not soggy. A spray bottle can be helpful for gentle watering. Covering the pot with a clear plastic bag to create a mini greenhouse can help retain moisture during germination. Germination and patience. Germination can take several weeks, so be patient. Once you see tiny green sprouts emerge, gradually remove the plastic cover to allow for air circulation. Thinning. As the seedlings grow, you may need to thin them out if they're too crowded. The weakest ones can be gently removed to give the stronger ones more space to grow. Uppotting. Once the seedlings reach a few inches tall, they can be transplanted into individual pots with fresh cactus mix. Growing on. Continue to provide your prickly pear seedlings with plenty of sunlight and well-draining soil. Water them when the soil feels dry to the touch. With proper care, your prickly pear cactus should slowly grow into a beautiful and rewarding addition to your plant collection. How to juice prickly pear. Here's my method for juicing prickly pear, perfect for capturing that vibrant color and delicious flavor. Prepare for battle. First things first, defense. Those glochids, tiny barbed spines, can be a real pain. Gear up with a pair of thick gardening gloves and maybe even some long sleeves for extra protection. You'll also need a sharp knife, a cutting board, a blender, and a fine mesh sieve. Tame the beast. Carefully hold the prickly pear with gloved hands and use your sharp knife to slice off both ends. Discard those prickly bits. Then, with the cactus vertical, make a single, deep cut down the side of the peel, going from top to bottom, but not cutting all the way through. Peel power. This is where the gloves come in super handy. Gently pry open the peel from the flesh using your fingers or the tip of your knife. The peel should come away fairly easily, revealing the beautiful magenta, red, or orange fruit inside. Optional seed removal. Prickly pear flesh has tiny black seeds. They're technically edible, but I prefer to remove them for a smoother juice. Use a knife to carefully cut out the seeds, or if the fruit is soft enough, you can simply scoop out the flesh with a spoon, leaving the seeds behind. Juicing time. Chop the peeled and de-seeded prickly pear flesh into roughly 1-inch cubes. Add the chopped fruit to your blender and blend on high until it's completely liquefied. This might take a few pulses or a continuous blend for 30 to 40 seconds, depending on your blender's power. Straining for smoothness. Pour the blended prickly pear mixture into your fine mesh sieve placed over a large bowl or pitcher. Press down on the pulp with the back of a spoon to extract as much juice as possible. You might need to repeat this process a couple of times to remove all the pulp and get a nice, smooth juice. Enjoy! There you have it, freshly squeezed prickly pear juice. You can enjoy it as is for a refreshing drink or use it in cocktails, smoothies, or even salad dressings. Just remember, store leftover juice in an airtight container in the refrigerator for up to 3 days. How to remove prickly pear cactus. There are 2 main ways to remove prickly pear cactus: mechanical removal and chemical removal. Here's a breakdown of both methods. Mechanical removal. This is a good option for smaller infestations, or if you want to avoid using herbicides. It can be a bit labor-intensive, but it's a natural and eco-friendly approach. Digging it out. This works well for individual plants or small patches. Use a shovel to carefully loosen the soil around the base of the cactus. Wear gloves and long sleeves for protection from those glochids, tiny spines. Once loose, gently lift the cactus and remove any remaining roots. Cutting and grubbing. For larger areas, you could tackle it section by section. Use lopping shears or a sharp knife to cut the pads off the cactus at the base. Then, use a grub hoe or shovel to dig up and remove the remaining stem sections. Be sure to collect all the pads and dispose of them properly to prevent them from taking root again. Chemical removal. This method can be effective for large infestations, but it's important to use caution and follow the instructions on the herbicide label carefully. Herbicides can harm desirable plants and pollinator insects, so only use them as a last resort. Herbicide spray. Look for a systemic herbicide labeled for controlling prickly pear cactus. These herbicides work by being absorbed by the plant and killing it slowly. Follow the mixing instructions and application rates carefully. Remember, it might take a few weeks to see the full effects of the herbicide. Additional tips. No matter which method you choose, be sure to remove all the parts of the cactus, including the pads, stems, and roots. Leaving any behind can lead to regrowth. When disposing of prickly pear cactus parts, bag them securely and throw them away in the trash. Do not compost them, as this could spread the cactus to other areas. If you're dealing with a large infestation, it might be best to consult with a professional landscaping service or your local agricultural extension office for guidance. How often do prickly pear cactus bloom? Prickly pear cactus typically bloom once a year, although the exact timing can vary depending on the specific variety and climate. Here's a breakdown of what you can expect. Blooming season. In most cases, prickly pear cactus blooms appear in late spring or early summer. For me, that usually means somewhere between mid-May and June. The buds will start to appear on the pads a few weeks before the actual flowers emerge. Short-lived spectacle. The individual prickly pear flowers themselves are beautiful, but they're not long-lasting. Each bloom tends to only open for a single day. Worth the wait. The good news is that the blooming period for prickly pear cactus isn't just one flower and done. The plant will usually produce a succession of blooms over several weeks. So, while each flower is fleeting, you'll get to enjoy a colorful display for a good chunk of time. Climate can play a role. Keep in mind that factors like temperature and rainfall can influence blooming times. In warmer climates, blooming might start a little earlier, while cooler areas might see blooms appear a bit later. Also, consistent warm temperatures and adequate sunlight will generally encourage better flowering. So, while prickly pear cactus blooms are an annual event, the exact timing can vary a bit. But with a little patience, you can look forward to a vibrant floral display on your prickly pear cactus for a few weeks each year. How to get prickly pear thorns out of skin. Here's how to tackle those pesky prickly pear thorns, otherwise known as glochids, that love to embed themselves in your skin. Prep for battle. You'll be dealing with tiny barbs, so grab some tweezers and a magnifying glass. Optional but helpful. If the glochids are around your eyes, skip the tweezers and see a doctor right away. Don't brush. Resist the urge to rub or scratch the affected area. This will only drive the glochids in deeper and make removal more difficult. Brush off loose glochids. Use a soft brush, like a clean makeup brush, to gently brush away any loose glochids on the surface of your skin. Tweezers are your friend. For the more embedded glochids, grab your tweezers and patience. Under good lighting, and possibly with a magnifying glass, carefully grasp each glochid with the tip of the tweezers and pull it straight out, following the direction of the barb. Sticky tape to the rescue. If you're dealing with a larger area covered in glochids, try using a piece of clear tape. Press the tape gently onto the affected area, then slowly peel it back. The sticky tape should adhere to the glochids and remove them in one go. Repeat this process until you've removed as many glochids as possible. Be gentle. Remember, patience is key. Try not to dig or prod at your skin, as this can irritate it further. If a glochid seems too stubborn or breaks off, leaving the barb behind, don't force it. You can try applying a compress or some soothing calamine lotion to reduce irritation. Clean and soothe. Once you've removed as many glochids as possible, clean the affected area with warm water and mild soap. Applying a calamine lotion or aloe vera gel can help soothe any remaining irritation. Seek medical help, if needed, if you're having trouble removing a glochid, especially if it's near your eyes or causing excessive swelling or pain. Don't hesitate to seek medical attention. A doctor can safely remove any stubborn glochids and ensure there's no risk of infection. How to make prickly pear wine. Making prickly pear wine can be a fun and rewarding experience, but it does require some patience and attention to detail. Here's a breakdown of the process. Ingredients: 1 gallon, 3.8 liters, ripe prickly pear cactus fruit, washed and peeled. 1.5 pound, package wine sugar. 1 packet wine yeast, specifically recommended for cactus wines. 1 gallon, 3.8 liters, spring or filtered water. 1 tablespoon lemon juice, optional, for acidity. 1 teaspoon pectic enzyme, optional, helps extract juice. Equipment: large pot, cheesecloth, funnel, glass carboy, gallon size. Airlock, hydrometer, optional, but useful for monitoring sugar content. Wine bottles with corks. Instructions: prep the prickly pear. This is the trickiest part. Wear gloves and long sleeves for protection from those glochids, tiny spines. Cut the ends off the prickly pears and peel away the skin. You can use a knife or vegetable peeler, being careful not to waste too much flesh. Once peeled, cut the fruit into small cubes. Extract the juice. There are a few ways to do this. You can use a food processor to puree the fruit, then strain the puree through cheesecloth to remove the pulp. Another option is to simmer the cubed fruit in a pot with a little water for about 30 minutes. Then mash it with a potato masher and strain the liquid. If using, add the pectic enzyme at the beginning of simmering to help extract more juice. Measure and adjust. Measure the extracted prickly pear juice. You should ideally have around 1 gallon, 3.8 liters of juice. If you fall short, add enough spring water to reach the 1 gallon mark. Taste the juice at this point. If it seems very tart, you can add the optional tablespoon of lemon juice for a bit more acidity. Dissolve the sugar. In a large pot, heat some of the prickly pear juice, about a cup, until warm. Add the wine sugar and stir until completely dissolved. Then, pour the dissolved sugar mixture back into the rest of the prickly pear juice in your carboy. Hydrate the yeast. Following the package instructions, hydrate your wine yeast in a small amount of warm water, not hot. Let it sit for about 10 minutes until foamy and activated. Inoculate the must. Pour the activated yeast mixture into your carboy with the prickly pear juice and sugar mixture. This combination is called must in winemaking. Stir gently to combine. Attach the airlock. Fill the airlock with water and attach it to the carboy. The airlock allows carbon dioxide to escape during fermentation while preventing outside contaminants from entering. Fermentation. Store your carboy in a cool, dark place, around 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius, for primary fermentation. This will typically take 1 to 2 weeks. During this time, you'll see bubbles coming out of the airlock, indicating active fermentation. Racking, optional after primary fermentation is complete, siphoning the liquid, wine, off the sediment at the bottom of the carboy. Racking can help improve the clarity of your final wine. Repeat racking every few weeks throughout secondary fermentation. Secondary fermentation. Secondary fermentation can take several weeks or even months. Monitor the progress using a hydrometer if you have one. When the hydrometer reading stabilizes, indicating that the sugar has been converted to alcohol, fermentation is complete. Bottling. Siphon the finished wine into sanitized glass bottles, leaving about an inch of headspace at the top. Cork the bottles securely. Aging. Optional for a smoother taste. You can age your prickly pear wine for several months in a cool, dark place. Tips. Sanitize all your equipment before using it to prevent contamination. Be patient. Winemaking takes time. You can adjust the sweetness of your wine by adding less or more sugar at the beginning. There are many online resources and winemaking kits available that can provide more detailed instructions and variations on this recipe. Enjoy your homemade prickly pear wine. What does prickly pear smell like? Prickly pear itself doesn't have a strong smell, but the fruit does. It depends a bit on who you ask and what variety you're dealing with. But here's what I've noticed. Subtle and refreshing. Some folks describe the prickly pear fruit as having a very subtle, refreshing scent. It might be a hint of melon or cucumber, but very faint, sweet and floral. Others pick up on a touch of sweetness, with comparisons to floral notes. Maybe a hint of rose or something like honeysuckle, not overly fragrant. Overall, the prickly pear fruit isn't known for being a super fragrant fruit. It's more about the taste and vibrant color than the aroma. Here's a fun fact, though. The flowers of the prickly pear cactus are a different story. Those can actually be quite fragrant, with some describing them as smelling sweet and citrusy. Facing the challenges. Despite their resilience, Opuntia species are not immune to threats. Habitat loss, overgrazing, and the introduction of invasive species have all contributed to the decline of some populations. Climate change also poses a significant challenge, as rising temperatures and altered precipitation patterns can affect the plant's growth and survival. Conservation efforts are crucial to ensure the continued existence of these valuable plants. Protecting their natural habitats, promoting sustainable harvesting practices, and raising awareness about their importance are all essential steps in safeguarding Opuntia for future generations. A continuing journey of discovery. My fascination with Opuntia continues to grow with each passing day. I am constantly amazed by their adaptability, their beauty, and their multifaceted contributions to both human societies and the natural world. As I continue to learn more about these remarkable plants, I am filled with a sense of wonder and appreciation for the intricate web of life that connects us all.